Hi, my name is Emily. I'm an economics supplemental instructor. This is my 5th or 6th semester working with macro and microeconomics classes. And this is part of a video tutorial series to cover some of the historically difficult macroeconomics concepts. So this tutorial is going to be talking about real versus nominal GDP. You've probably talked in your classes a bit about the difference between real and nominal GDP. I just want to recap them quickly, and then we'll go into a mathematical example, which is the kind of thing you're most likely to see on your exams or your tests. So nominal GDP is basically, it's a measure of our current output at today's prices. And economists tend not to use it frequently because we don't really, when we're looking at how much output we produce, we don't want those numbers skewed with current prices. We really want to measure just of how much stuff we're producing. And that's where real GDP comes in. And we'll show this mathematically, but by adjusting for changes in price and by adjusting for inflation, real GDP is actually a more accurate measure of the quantity of output that we've produced in a given year. So we tend to use it a lot more frequently. So this is a very simplified example of how we calculate nominal versus real GDP, but it's got the basics down. So nominal GDP, when we're looking at an example like this, because we said nominal is current year prices, if we're asking for the nominal GDP of 2007, we would just do 2007 prices times 2007 quantities. And obviously this is a very simplified economy of just lattes and books, but this is, again, similar to something that you'll see on your test. So if we were asked for the nominal GDP of 2007, we would just multiply quantity of lattes times price of lattes, and then add that to quantity of books times price of books. And we would get our nominal GDP in 2007 to be $16.50. And let's say that we're using 2007 as our base year prices. So we're keeping, when we're calculating real GDP, we're keeping these prices constant. This is the base year that we're using. So if these are the same prices that we're using, then we would go through the same example, and the real GDP in 2007 would just be the same thing. It would still be $16.50 because we're using 2007 prices. The trickier part comes when we start to talk about real versus nominal GDP in 2010. So for 2010 nominal, we would do the exact same thing that we did for 2007 nominal. So we would take 2010 prices times 2010 quantities. So it would be 7 times 120 plus 15 times 140. And we would get a nominal GDP in 2010 of $29.40. Now, when we're looking at real GDP in 2010, that's when it gets a little bit trickier. We specified that 2007 is our base year. So when we're looking at real GDP for 2010, we're going to continue to use 2007 prices. And like I said with real GDP, the purpose of that, we want GDP to be a measure of the amount of stuff that we're producing, the amount of output that we're producing. So by holding prices constant, real GDP gives us a more accurate measure of the amount of output that we're producing, and it's not affected by changes in price. So our real GDP would be 5 times 120 plus 10 times 140. And we would get a real GDP in 2010 of 2,000. So just by looking at the difference between nominal and real GDP in 2010, you can see why real GDP is such a useful measure, because nominal 2010 GDP is actually a lot higher than real GDP in 2010, right? And this measure isn't entirely accurate because it's also showing these changes in prices. And we don't want real GDP to measure changes in prices. We just want it to measure changes in output. So by holding these prices constant, we get real GDP as a more accurate measure of just changes in output and not changes in price. So I guess I would close this by just saying practice is really key to helping understand concepts like this. So I would really encourage you to use your textbook to practice right now some of the concepts that we've just covered, and that will really cement in your memory how these concepts work in relation to the concepts that you've been learning in class.